Okay, welcome everybody to the experience this morning, and we're going to begin in a new series, which this tape is titled "In the Beginning." And what I see you back there now? What is it still crooked? Which way does it have to go? This has to go up. This she says it's too. I'm not going to do it anymore. You know that's all right. Okay. What we're going to do, what I want you to do here is you're going to look at the Bible in a way that probably you've never looked at it before. And the premise as we go week from week, as we explore through Genesis and go into Exodus, is that what you're going to look here is not a book that has anything to do with religion, has anything to do with spirituality, but is totally talking to you about the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of the mind. And that's a very, very important part, see? The evolution of consciousness from Genesis right through. You know, we begin at the very beginning and then move ourselves and see these things develop as they come together. Now, the first thing that you have to look at is if you're going to look at the Bible, you're going to look at Genesis, you're going to look at the Garden of Eden, and you have to say to yourself, is this literal? Did this really happen? Because that's an extremely important thing. You can't go to step 2 unless you go to step 1. What you have, the first thing that you might look at, and which causes me to wonder, is in this particular garden, in this primeval place of millions of years ago, if you would, you have two English people. You've got Adam and Eve running around. Okay, that's the first thing that causes me to wonder about this. What are these two English people doing in this jungle running around? Okay. Now, the second thing that happened is the entire world, as the premise of this story is the entire world is filled with cancer and AIDS and atomic war and rape and pillaging and looting because these two English people ate an apple. That's it. I mean, there's no, I don't think, you know, that's not the way you spell apple. Okay, they ate an apple or a piece of fruit, and the whole place is an absolute nightmare because of this. That's the second part of the story that makes me question it. Two English people in this place, they ate a piece of fruit, and the whole world is subject to terrible destruction for that reason. So that's the second thing that gets me to be a little concerned about whether the story is literal. The third thing is one of the main characters in the story, okay, is a talking snake. I don't think so, all right? Now, for those of you that may be very religious and everything, let me just tell you something. Snakes do not talk. So this might be a reason to think that this might not be literal. There is a talking snake, and he's a main character in the show. Now, the next part of this that makes you wonder is these two English people running around do not know that they're naked. They don't know they're naked, okay? In other words, they have no idea that they have no panties. They're just running around and, see, all of a sudden, how do they find out they're naked? The talking snake tells them. Okay? The talking snake say, hey, what's that? And he looks, oh, wow, I didn't know. And they go running, and they got to find fig leaves. He gets 1, she gets 3, and then they come out, and they're all right, see? Now, that's the problem I have. English people, the whole world is destroyed because they ate a piece of fruit. There's a talking snake. These people don't know they're naked until they are told they're naked by the talking snake. And this is the point. Now, there's another very important part of this program here. In the world that the religionists are trying to get educational institutions all over the world to teach creation theory along with evolution, and this is the basis of this is all they've got. They've got two English people running around naked, don't know they don't have any clothes on until they come in contact with a talking snake. The talking snake tells them, hey, you don't have any clothes on, why don't you eat this fruit? And that's the basis of teaching people about creation. See? And so I think we should then say there's enough evidence here from the talking snake and people not realizing they don't have any clothes on to say that this is not a literal story. And once you get to that point that it's not a literal story, then you look at it and say, if it isn't literal, what do all of these things mean? Look, you can't look at this thing about God creating stars and God creating water and God creating the earth and God creating birds and all of these things and say that's literal, but the point about the talking snake and they didn't know they didn't have any clothes on, that's not literal. It either is one thing or it's not. So the entire context then has to be that this is an evolution of something. And as we go along, you'll find out it's an evolution of you. It's an evolution of consciousness. Okay. And that's what basically this is. Has nothing to do with a physical creation. Has to do with the creation that is the evolution of ourselves. And in that way, it becomes extremely important. The evolution of the mind. As we go through these things weekly, one of the things we'll do is we're not going to go line by line because much of this falls in the form of allegory. We're going to highlight, we're going to hit those things that are key, things that you've experienced in the past and understand in the past. And then together we'll try to look at them and see, gee, you know, what is this that I'm looking at? What is this all about? Okay. So one of the first things we're going to run into as we look at the quote, evolution of ourselves and the evolution of life and creation and so forth, is a person by the name of Adam. This is going to be the first person. Okay. Now, in understanding this Adam, we have to go back to that story of the masturbation as it was framed of God in Memphis, Egypt, in which the seed spilled from God, and the first man who then came into being was named Atom. And here then we have Atom as the source of what we know, the center of all life, which is Adam. Now we're starting to see something that makes sense. The beginning of everything is Atom. And then conveyed in an allegorical sense in an English Bible by the name Adam. It's the same thing. Whether it's you call it Adam A-D-A-M or Adam A-T-O-M, it's the same thing. But what's being spoken of at the time is that the source of all life in the primordial way was the atom. Okay, and so that's what we have. And what you're going to see as we develop then is the development from that which is the very beginning of the atom into that which then incorporated into it the mental process, which is Eve, and then the complexities of it as the two start to struggle with the left and the right side. The mental starts to struggle with the physical in the inclusion of Cain and Abel and all of that kind of business. Okay, so that's where we're at. Now, one of the first things you notice, if you have a little Bible, you open up to page 2 in the Bible, and one of the very first things you're going to see in Genesis 2, verse 8, is the fact that a garden is going to be part of the story. Okay, our people are going to dwell in a garden, okay, and the garden's name is Eden. And the word Eden means delight. It is the garden of delight. Delight, love, peace. That's Eden. And this is created, and it's very interesting to know something, okay? In Genesis chapter 2, verse 8, the primeval dwelling place of all living things, it said that the garden is planted eastward. Okay. Eastward. And remember, whenever you look north, east is always on the right side. So here then we have something. The center of life is atom. Okay? And a creative essence of that which explodes into you and me has built within it a garden of delight, a garden of life, a garden of love, which is located at the right side. It's located eastward. All right? Now, take a look, if you would, and you'll get a concept of this. If you turn to page 716, turn to page 716, and in page 716, you'll find the book of Ezekiel, all right? And Ezekiel chapter 43, page 716. Ezekiel chapter 43. Now the garden of delight, the garden of Eden, is that which is the right hemisphere of the brain. That's what's being set up for you. There is a place within you which is filled with delight, which is filled with love, which is filled with peace. In Genesis chapter 43, okay, look at verse 4. And the glory of the Lord came into the house by way of the gate whose prospect is towards the east, to the right side. Look at verse 2. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. Why? Come on, because it's at the right side. The garden of delight. Within you there is a garden. It's a word now. Remember, we have the premise. We're not talking about literalizing anything. We're saying there is a part of you that is an entity at the right hemisphere, the creative part, which creation has tagged or termed a garden of delight. There is beauty, there is love, there is creation, there is all that is new, and it is at the right side. It is at the right hemisphere. Okay. Now this is that which is the description of what it is that we seek to return to. We are seeking to return to that which is the garden. Now there's a very interesting thing in this so-called creation epic that you're looking at. If you look at the 7 days of creation, basically what you're looking at is your own creation, which is the 7 chakras. From the earth to the water, to the air, to the fire, the earth being the lower mind, the water being the second stage, which is truth, the air where the soaring things fly being that which is divine consciousness, to the fire, which is the sun and the stars and all of these things which are lit, which is being that which is spiritual, to the 4th stage of consciousness. And then you get to a point where it says in Genesis 2:2, go on back onto page 2 or whatever it is, Genesis chapter 2, the interesting thing is if you look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 2, and on the 7th day, God ended his work. That's the 7th chakra. That's the place of peace. That's the place where you end your work. That's the place where you struggle through the Monday of your life, and the Tuesday of your life, and the Wednesday of your life, and the Thursday of your life, and your Friday of your life, and your Saturday of your life, and finally you get to the Sunday of your life, and the Sunday of your life is the S-U-N day of your life, which is the pineal gland of the brain, which throws open the kingdoms of the East inside of you, and there is life exploding. All new, all color, all excitement. The garden of delight is yours, because you have gone through the 6 days and now you have reached the place of Sabbath, which is the Sunday, which is the pineal gland of the brain, which is the Sabbath. And in that place, as it says in the Bible, no burden can be brought into there. No burden can be brought into the holy city on the Sabbath. That was a literal law. You couldn't bring anything, work, any effort into Jerusalem on the 7th day. But it wasn't talking about Jerusalem there. It's talking about Jerusalem in here. No burden can, the only part of you where there is no stress, there is no fear, there is no guilt, there is no hurt, there is no anger, is in that garden at the right side. And where all of the guilt and all of the fear and all of the hurt is in the left side, and that's where we hang out. But there is a garden of delight. And so we see that. Now let me just show you. On the 7th day, there was this rest, which means we have created these 6 entities and we have risen upwards into that holy place. That's why you have 7 chakras. That's why you have 7 days of the week, because they knew at that time of the 7 planets. Go to page 1005. And in page 1005, you get to the book of Revelation. And in the book of Revelation, in chapter 5, verse 1, it talks about entering the garden of delight in a little different way. And it talks about the 7 chakras, and it mentions those same 7 days of creation, but in a little different way. And I saw in the right hand, which is the right hemisphere of the brain, of him who sat on the throne, which is that part of you that very seldom do you touch, that higher part of consciousness, a book, the book of life, written within you. And on the backside, that's the spine. Sealed with 7 seals. That's the place of energy of all life. The place of energy of all life soars up the spinal canal. And the fluid that flows through the spine is called by the Greek term chrism, which means Christ. And so then when you generate this electrical energy within you, that sleeping serpent, which is a female energy of God, coiled 3.5 times at the base of your spine, comes to life, and it causes the chrism, the Christ, to rise from the grave of your lower experience, upward through that spinal canal till it impacts with the pineal, which is Aries, the lamb, and throws open the right hemisphere of the brain, and the garden of delight then bursts forth in flower and color to you. Very poetic sounding, very Disney-esque kind of sounding, but true. True. And the point is, you don't have to wait till you die. You don't have to find it in a book. You experience it through yourself as you then start the movement. But you can't sit down on Monday and think tomorrow is going to be Sunday. You got to go through Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday, and you got to rise up through 2, 3, 4, 5 until finally you impact that gland which sits at the throne, so it throws open the right side. That's the whole premise of this thing. Okay. And how do I know it's true? Because I see the sun do it constantly. every year, forever. The sun does that. That's a very interesting thing. Of course, all of this stuff is interesting. But there's something very interesting. If you look at the first page, and you're to go into the actual ancient language of the Bible, in the original language, the name of the divine entity is E-L-O-H-I-M. Elohim. Elohim. And what that, look at Genesis chapter 1. Let me show you what Elohim means. Look at Genesis chapter 1. You see verse 27? So God created man in his own image, and the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. Okay? Now watch Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, look at verse 22. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become as one of us. Do you know what Elohim is? Elohim is the plurality, however you spell it. It's two, okay? And Elohim means male and female. And do you know what? Your system of religion couldn't deal with Elohim. And so Elohim does not appear in your Bible. We took that which was the name of the divine entity, which means the male and female. You know why? Because of datum. Male and female. There's male and female in everything. There's male and female in atom. There's male and female in electricity. There's male and female in every type of energy in the world. There is male and female. In our image, man has become as one of us. Male and female, he created him. That which is the power that rises up your spine is the female. But the church, the religionists, couldn't deal with that. And so in the Dark Ages, they got rid of the mother God. They killed the mother Elohim, and we are left with the word God. Couldn't deal with it because it's female. I'm telling you that in the original language, the name of the divine creator is Elohim, which means male and female. And it was deliberately removed and replaced with a non-entity by the name of God. For only one reason. Because women are not in any way, shape, or form to be able to be a part of that which we call the divine creator. Okay? Male and female created him and called their name Adam, which is Elohim. So we prove by this introduction the creation of energy. Male and female, which is atom, Elohim, that which is the kundalini, which rises up the spiritual feminine energy that rises up and touches it. And we further prove our scientific thesis about this, that the energy is multiplied. Now here's an interesting thing. If you take an atom, all right, and you remove from that atom an electron, you then begin to multiply the energy. It's called splitting the atom. When we split an atom, you multiply the energy. That's the way this happens in these things. The biblical allegory describes this fact. Now remember, we said this is not literal. So how does the biblical allegory describe this fact? Look at page 2 of your Bible. If you're in Genesis chapter 2, verse 21, and here's Eastern allegory. Here's the way splitting of the atom is defined in an ancient document. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh, and the Lord had taken from the man the rib, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. The Lord took a rib out of Adam, and he made the population. In other words, what's being told to you in the symbolic way of Eastern allegory is that all life came from the splitting of the atom. All right? Now this makes sense, doesn't it? Because you know it. You know it. But you have sat through churches and all types of churches with people telling you about the talking snake and the people with no clothes on, and they ate an apple, and he pulled a rib out of this guy and he made a lady, and you never questioned it. Even though in your heart you knew it wasn't true. And so now you get to the point that you can't even discuss this with anybody in conservative fundamental religion because it makes sense. And do you know one thing you are not allowed to use in religion or in the fundamentalist approach to religion? That thing that I'm asking you to use now, common sense. It doesn't work in religion. Common sense. Do you honestly believe that if you were running around in a jungle, you wouldn't know if you had any clothes on? Just look at yourself. You would know. Do you honestly believe that as you ran around in the jungle, there would be a talking snake? Have you ever run into anything other than parrots that Joe and Rose had that talk? Have you ever run into, is there ever been such? There is no such thing. And now, have you at least even for a minute going to sit here and believe that the way you ladies were made was that they gave anesthesia to this guy, put him under, and ripped a rib out? I mean, you know, here's a guy that creates you. He can't figure a better way than rip a rib out of this guy and make Dorothy. But nobody questions it. They're all up and down this street. They believe that literally. Everything that we've laughed about, everything we've talked about this morning is literal as far as these people in these churches are concerned. So the energy is multiplied by the splitting of the atom. Okay? Life evolves into the physical, to the mental. And now what has happened? What have you seen here in the evolution? Okay? You had that which was the physical part, which was the first in creation. And now all of a sudden you have this second part, which is the mental. And you're starting to see the evolution of humankind. You no longer just have a physical process, you now have a physical and a mental process. You have two aspects of your nature. And you see the evolution of that. Okay. Now go to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1. In Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1 it says, "The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field." The word subtle means clever. Okay. What the serpent is, if you were to look at if Dr. Altieri had brought her thing like I told her to bring, she would. If you had looked at a human spine, maybe you should draw this. Huh? Yeah, you're carrying it with you. Does this look something like it? How would you draw it? You want to draw it? Sideways, laying down. Come here. Come here. Lying down. Would you draw it lying down?
Face down?
No, sideways, like you'd see it sideways. Okay. One thing she left out here. But do you see it? That's the face and the eye. So.
Wow. Don't forget them.
Yeah. But what I'm saying to you, this is the serpent. Okay? That's the subtle, clever serpent that's referred to here. It's the portrait of the human spine, the portrait which represents that which is your physical aspect. Okay. This is the part that talks to you and tells you all of these things that you should and you should not do. So Eve, then becoming the mind, is tempted by that which is the flesh, the physical part. You always get these feelings, don't you? Don't the feelings come from this lower part? You got this feel inside of you. And when you got this feeling inside of you, you get an idea of how I am going to carry out what I feel. Eve gets the idea from the serpent. Haven't you ever been talked to by the serpent? Certainly you have. You feel it all the time. It's time to eat the apple. You know what? And you know what? Nobody, except on very rare occasions, turns the serpent down. It can be anything. It can be anything. Do you know when I open the refrigerator, I've given up ice cream. Do you know when I open the refrigerator and Joan has this cookies and cream ice cream? Do you know what the serpent says? Aha! They say you shouldn't eat the forbidden cookies and cream. Ha ha ha! Go ahead. And I know if I eat it, something will happen. I'll be in bad favor with God. The heck with God. I'm eating it because the serpent said eat. Do you understand what this is all about? Huh? I got a feeling. That's the serpent. Don't eat it. Well, yes, I'm going to eat it because the serpent tells me it is. So that's the temptation. And now, when you're talking about you're going to eat, see, the Bible says you're going to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What is that? God of the devil, good and evil. And you know what happens when you eat from the knowledge of good and evil? It's not that they stay apart. They mix up. And they get all integrated with one another, and then you have confusion. You know, this is where I don't know what the heck to do. It's like that woman that did this. I can't do this. I can't. No, shall I ask anybody for help? No, because they'll think I don't know what I'm doing. Even though I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not going to ask anybody. Oh, just go ahead. Now just lay back. You know why she says lay back? Because then you can't see what this maniac is doing. And so she like, just stick your hand over here and lay back. Zingo! You know. Oh, it came out. She even had that thing she threw on top of me, the little collector with all of this blood in it. Yeah. Because we're confused. Do you ever get confused? Do you know what it confused? You're reading from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There's a lot of good things in there, but there's a lot of scuzzy things in there, and they're all mixed up. You know, it's like your stomach. You go out and you sit down and you say, oh, what a magnificent restaurant. You paid $50 for the dinner. Everything is gourmet. It's exquisite. Look at this and the salads. Oh, my God, look at the pastry. And look at this fine meat and all that. And then take a look at it on an x-ray machine after it deposits in here. It's a scuzzy mess inside. This thing is just, because it's now all confusion.
Billy.
Billy what? Here. Oh, that would be good. Have an EKG by Vampira. That'll be good. Okay, so you see where this is getting us to. And where the temptation and the confusion comes from is there. Now, there's a point here. Let me just show you this. Watch what goes on here. And this is very important. We kid, but I want you to show you something very interesting. Genesis chapter, well, look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 17. Okay? Chapter 2, 17, you shall not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's when you're told, meditate. Get your directions from the garden of delight. Get your directions from the right side. Don't take your directions from the left side. I don't care what you read. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care what college you've gone to. I don't care how many you have, so many degrees they call you Dr. Fahrenheit. It doesn't make any difference. You have to meditate. You have to sit within yourself and rise to the garden at the right side. All of that crap that's flowing in your mind has to shut down so that you get real, true knowledge which comes from that which is the east within you. That's what's being said here. Don't trust that which comes from the left side, because more often than not, well, you can see the condition of the world. Now, let me show you something in Genesis chapter 3. Look at verse 11, okay? Here's what God talking to our heroes. Who told you you were naked? Who told you you were naked? You know how important that is? What's being said there is, I didn't say there was anything wrong with you. Who said you're guilty? Who said you're not doing what's right? Who told you? Who made up something that I never told you? I never said there was anything bad or anything sinful or anything that you should be guilty. Who told you that there was something wrong with the way you are? The serpent. The lower part, the mind part. And who told you all of your life that you're guilty? The serpent, the religions of the world, the institutions of the world, the churches of the world. And they have kept you all of your life running around hiding, looking for fig leaves to cover every bit of you that you felt was exposed. And that God yells out to say, who the hell told you? Who are you listening to? What that is saying, that now you think what is evil is something that never was evil. I never ever. But the institutions of the world have said, this is wrong, and you buy it, so you run into the woods to hide yourself, and you run into yourself, and you become filled with guilt, because the systems of the world and the religions of the world are that which is the lower serpent saying, you're guilty, you're naked. Yes?
The original sin, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Well, the original, basically, if you talk about the original sin, remember, what happened to, if you talk about the original sin, and this is, I'm glad you brought that point up. Let me show you something here. Some of you have never seen this. This word that has scared you, you know what that is? That's the name of the moon god, of Ur of the Chaldees. And the moon in ancient Eastern mysticism means the emotions. And what sin is when you're living in your emotional nature, you're living in sin. It has nothing to do with whether you drink or you smoke or whether you gamble or whatever. It has to do with your dwelling in your emotions. That's all it is. That's why Abraham lived in Ur of the Chaldees. Okay? He lived under sin. Sin was the god of Ur of the Chaldees. And so the story says to Abraham, I want you to move. In other words, what's being said, there was no Abraham! There was none of these people didn't exist. What I'm telling you, these people never existed. This is created to teach you about yourself. You exist, and that which is within you exists. And so here the story says, I want you to move out of here. I don't want you to dwell in your emotions anymore. Because when you're dwelling in your emotions is when you're dwelling in sin. And that's what this is. There's one interesting point, too. If you look in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. This is talking about the creation of the stars. And it says, gosh, let there be lights in the firmament, and let them be for signs. You have your entire religious community running around talking about astrologers. Oh, they follow the signs. Where'd they get it from? Who said that that's what it's for? Who told anybody that the stars are for signs? It's in the Bible. You can't come against people and say, oh, you're not stepping in. God said that's what it's for. Okay? And so however you want to go with it, that's what it's for. Start was in the Bible. Okay. We get a little bit, we run through that. We have a little bit of an understanding. The atom, the center of all life, was split. All things came. Then the evolution of the mind from that which was purely physical to that which was mental. The movement of the electrical energy in the mind. And now we come into the second part of the aspect. When you now have an atom, which is the physical, and you have an Eve, which is the mental, you give birth. Inside of you comes that which is Cain and Abel. Struggle. Struggle. Conflict. Inside of you is a conflict. Inside of you is a struggle. Inside of you it goes on. Okay? And this is the allegory of the left and the right side. If you're in China, they would call the story of Cain and Abel the story of yin and yang. The black and the white. And that's what the story is about. It has nothing to do with two people. These people never existed. Now, let me show you something. Do you know what the word Cain means? It means tiller of the soil. Your mind is the soil. Your mind is the earth. What you dig out, your own ideas, is Cain. Religion is Cain. This is my idea. This is our idea. This is our way to get to God. That which is the system, whatever it is, whatever techniques you're digging out of your own mind is Cain, the tiller of the soil. You know what Abel means? Keeper of the sheep. Sheep are divine thoughts. Keep your eyes on the sheep. Who are the first ones to see the Christ child? The shepherds. Why? Because they're watching the sheep. They're watching their thoughts. Got it? So you see the evolution, where we've come from? We started with the atom, the Big Bang. We started with the movement of electrical energy, which then started into the evolution of humankind, and then that was the incorporation of the mental. And then all of a sudden, when we had these mental faculties within us, and we were starting to take from that which was knowledge of good and evil, we got into some confusion. We then realized that inside of us is Cain and Abel. There is that which is our ideas. There was that which is God's ideas. Okay? And all the time, don't you do it all the time? Just like, I just come up with a great idea. Cain. But when you sit and you watch the sheep in meditation, and then this that comes to you is that which is of God. Abel. Okay. So that's the meaning of the names. And if you look in Genesis chapter 4 on page 3, in verse 3 and 4, Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. In other words, he was bringing that which grew out of himself. You bring that which is your ideas, what you've dug up. And that's what a lot of people say. Hey, what do you say to somebody when they come up with an idea? Where'd you dig that up? Right? You dug it up from that which is the ground of your own mind. And it won't work. And it won't work. See what it says in verse 2, chapter 4? Cain was a tiller of the ground. And look at Abel. He brought the firstlings of his flock. And the Lord had respect unto Abel, but unto Cain he had no respect. What you think is meaningless. What your teacher thinks is meaningless. What you've read means nothing. What God thinks, what God brings to you is everything. This is unacceptable. It doesn't make any difference whether it's doctrine or dogma or how long it's been in any religious institution. It's come out of the mind of somebody. It's their idea. It doesn't work. And here's the interesting part. What did Abel bring? The first of his flock. See? What's so important about bringing the firstborn? Let me show you what's so important about bringing the firstborn. Go to page 942. 1 Corinthians 15. And look at verse 45. The first man, Adam, was made a living soul. The last was made a quickening spirit. Now look what it says. Look at the very next verse. That was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural. Afterward, that which is spiritual. When you come to that thing which you call God, what you must sacrifice is that which is the natural part. Yourself, your mind, your thoughts. Give it! And that's why he gave the first of those things that were coming out of his mind. Abel sacrificed the first part, which was himself. I have shut down. And how does Jesus say you sacrifice the first part, which is yourself? Take no thought. You've made your sacrifice. You've sacrificed the firstborn. That's the whole thing. It goes all the way through into Exodus, the firstborn of the Egyptians. Those things which are the part of your flesh, the lower part must be sacrificed. And then that which is the second part, which is the spiritual, can live. But they can't live together. Cain and Abel could never live together. Don't you see? They had nothing in common. The left has nothing in common with the right. The lower has nothing in common with the higher. Light has nothing in common with darkness. Cain has nothing in common with Abel. Those which are the divine part of the right side of you have nothing in common with that which is the left side, the carnal side. Okay? And so then here we have the importance. I've given the first part. I've given myself. I've given my thoughts. I've given my mind. See, what the heck does it make any difference whether you study under somebody? What difference does it make if you go to a conference or a seminar? What difference does it make if you go to all of these places and you've still got this? Doesn't make any difference. All you are is a smart Cain, but you're still Cain. But when you've given it and there is no more intelligence, there is no... then you're starting to give that which is holy, and then which comes pouring back is the wind that comes from the east, the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding. And you want. Do you want to say something?
Something that jumped out of me from verse 3 and 4 in Genesis. It says, in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought the fruit of the ground. Time. What
Yeah.
we've talked about time, and in the spirit there is no time and place, but in Cain in the physical there was time, evidence of time.
Exactly. That's
experience.
good. Very good. So you saw, that's it. And you're going to see a lot of things. I'm not going to go line by line. You're going to see a lot of things. I'm just trying to give you an idea what you're looking at. See, you're not reading the Bible. Rip the cover off. Don't really do it, but rip the cover off. You're not reading a Bible. You're reading a course in listen to me, you're reading a course in cosmic psychology. All allegorically written, and all of the characters in the play portray parts of your mind, your brain, your system, your body. Okay? The firstborn. So, Abel sacrifices the natural part. And it says in Genesis 4, for the Lord had respect unto Abel, but not unto Cain. Now, let me show you something. Here you've come. Here you've come. You've come into the meditation. You sat down one night and you sacrificed your firstborn. You sacrificed yourself. You've sacrificed your thoughts. You've sacrificed your ideas. They say, boy, you come up to me and you say, that was a great meditation. I really got a lot. I just feel so tremendous. And then I never see you again. And you know, I know what happened. Cain met you out in the field and he killed you. That which is the lower part is always there, friends. It will never die. When creation, when heaven, when all is consummated, it will always be there. Because if that's not there, you'll never have a reason to know that you should grow. If that's not there, you'll never have a reason to know that something's not right. It's like the red light. Sometimes you don't like to be stopped by the red light. But if that red light is not there, you'll never have a reason to know that you should stop. Cain is that stop sign. Okay? But I'll tell you something, and I don't care how long you've meditated, and I don't care how sharp you think you are spiritually, Cain's lurking in that field every minute of the day. And if he catches you alone, in other words, he kind of catches you with your pants down, when you least suspect it, he'll nail you. And you'll find a reason not to meditate. You'll find a reason why you should stay away. You'll find a reason why you should do something else. He'll make it clear. He'll make it very, very clear. Look at Genesis chapter 4, verse 8. Genesis chapter 4 and verse 8. And it says, and Cain talked with Abel his brother. When they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. He talks to you, doesn't he? Isn't that the first thing that always happens? You don't just decide, I'm not going to do this anymore. It comes in your mind. You know, oh, I got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do the other things. The other things, life is too important. You're dead. You are dead. And you've been killed by your brother, which is your mind. It's killed you. But it's so important, you can't live without that. Look what it says. Genesis chapter 4, verse 14. And here's a little part that you know that this is an allegory, and it's a symbolic story. Cain says to God, you've driven me out of the face of the earth. My face shall be hid. I'll be a fugitive. It shall come to pass that everyone that finds me shall kill me. Tip? Only takes one, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to kill me. And then it says in Genesis 4:15, a mark is placed on Cain. Because there will always be that part of you. Because without that, you cease to exist as a functional human being. You then become a puppet. And you were not created to be a puppet. You're always going to have that left side. Here's the point. Okay, watch it. Abel's the horse. Cain is the cart. What's your challenge? Put the horse before the cart. Most of us, our lives, the cart's been pulling the horse. And now's the time to get it right and have the horse pull the cart. All you want to do is you want to have, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose this. I like to go to Jimmy Buffett and concerts, and I like to rock and roll. I want this. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Think of all the things. Look at your nice clothes, the feelings you get, you know, You want to have all of this. This is great to have. But the point is, how do you put it in perspective? How do you make sure that the control comes from the God side? This is the part, you know, ice cream and chewing gum and going on vacation and messing around, different things, going to Atlantic City. This is fun part. This is life. You can't see the Alps, and you can't go to Japan, and you can't fly in a plane unless you got this. So a marketplace, this will always exist until the end of time. Your challenge is just to understand this part has to be subjected to that part. You know what this is? You know what this is this is the wife, and this is the husband. Okay? And that's what is meant, that the wife must be subjected to her husband. That which is the lower, the mind, must be subjected to that which is the spirit. Okay? So all of these things are play on words of that same thing. Okay, real quickly, let's go to Genesis 6. We're just about ready to, oh gee, we're late. Gosh. Can you give me another 5 minutes? Okay. In Genesis 6, there's a reference to the, look at this. You want to see another part that you know that this is not a real story? It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born. The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and took them wives of which they choose. Can you imagine? Now what you're thinking of is angels coming down on the earth, and they're seeing these girls. Hey, Mike. Nothing like that in heaven, I'll tell you that. Well, okay? And so they have sexual intercourse, and then giants are born, and all this stuff. It says, and they took them wives. Verse 4, there were giants in the earth when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, the mighty men of renown. The sons of God, okay, are that which is the positive thoughts. The sons of God are that which is the positive thoughts. That's the spiritual side. This is another play on the same theme. The daughters of men are desires of the emotions. Okay? Let me show you exactly what you've got here, and this is very important. When you mix that which is the spiritual aspect of the higher with that which is the desires of the lower, you know what you've got? A thing called religion. It's exactly what it is. And do you ever see them jumping over chairs and going berserk, or the music? The emotions are now firmly entwined with that which is the spirit, and you really think you've got something. But what you've got are giants. In other words, you have constructed that which is nothing but the flesh. Magnified, larger and larger the concentration on that which is the physical. The inner core, and this happens. It really happens. The only thing, you can never ever have an intercourse between the right side and the left side. Whenever you have an intercourse between the right side and the left side, you have an emotional nature which now moves into the spiritual nature, and you've got religion. And you've got women walking around with handkerchiefs on their head or veils over their faces and all of this stuff, and you've got to kneel here and you've got to do all of these things because your emotional nature is firmly tuned into your spiritual nature. So when the sons of God are your divine thoughts or your aspects from the right side, get intercoursing with the left side, then you got all of the confusion. Can't have it that way. You can't have it that way because we're getting ready to move into the very next part of the message, okay? Because in Genesis 6:4 it says the children, the lower emotional thoughts, all of this stuff moves into a place of confusion and an emphasis on the physical. And Genesis 6:6 says allegorically, God is sorry he created the whole thing. Which means inside of you this hasn't worked. Why? Because you didn't listen. It said take no thought. But you had to use what you had to do, and it wasn't going to work unless you got rocks or smoke or feathers, or else you read this book or that book, or went and saw this preacher or that preacher, and all of these things until you got this confusion. And you know what you're doing? You're on an endless quest to find out, and you never realize that that's because you've had this intercourse with your own mind instead of being a pure virgin. And what happens when you're a pure virgin with inside of yourself? The Christ child, can be born. But you know what it caused? Let me show you what has happened, and then we're finished. That's your earth. That's your lower mind. Right? Just wake up for just 10 seconds more. I promise it's over. That's your lower mind, right? What's going to be necessary in order to get all of that crap out of you that has come from your intercourse with the lower mind and your spirit? You got to be cleansed. You got to move into the second stage of consciousness, which is water. There's got to be a baptism. And so it says in the Bible, God brings a flood. and then we go into the Noah story, which is actually the movement of the lower mind to the second stage of consciousness, which is earth, which is water. And from that point, you'll rise up to the mountaintop, and you'll be in the air, and then you'll be touched by that which is the fire. And that's what the Bible says, and that's what the song says. I'm not going to destroy it by water anymore. In this age of Aquarius, you're not going to be hit again by water. You're going to rise above the order. It won't be water, but fire next time. It won't be the second stage of consciousness. You will have evolved to the fourth stage of consciousness. Huh? And so then the Bible here says, now we begin the story of Noah. And all the story of Noah is the movement from the lower mind, which is the earth, to that which is the second stage of consciousness, which is water. And you've got to be prepared to bring that duality of your nature into that ark and let it rest in the midst of the storm and the conflict that's going on within you. It's all a part of the same thing. First one. Thank you very much for sharing this time in the beginning.